Hi everyone, Trina here, and we are into the Divine Feminine 1.3 Hidden Secrets Thereof. And we just got done going over the initiates of the Masters. And by the sixth initiation, he was begging, please, no more, no more initiations. And as we come to find, these initiations are truly challenging, but at the other aspect, they're absolutely wonderful. So when we can start to embrace some of the hardest things we've had to go through in our life, it's when we truly become spiritual warriors and spiritual adepts. So take all of it with a grain of salt, because ye are of the salts of the earth. So all of us are experiencing different things, different challenges, different ways, and all of that is in perfect order because none of us are here to do the same exact thing. So all of our differences and the diversity that makes us this special group of what I call you guys my soul family, soul tribe. All of us are bringing all of these different talents from many, many lifetimes of mastery. And we're all finding each other now at this time and in this space so we can remember and reawaken each other and remember why we came here and remember our treasures and start to activate and express them once again with one another. So I think we came here to see the second coming, and that second coming would be us learning how to activate, heal, and love one another through all of our differences. And that's the beauty of creation, is all the diversity within it. So that's our greatest strength. And when we can stop the division, stop the fighting, and come together with curiosity over the differences that we have, rather than feeling that you need to defend your position or your belief. Because what your position is and what your belief is probably perfect for you. But that's not what somebody else might be here to experience in this lifetime. So we need to learn to have compassion and gnosis, that all of the variations of life need to be allowed, because through that diversity is where we will see the most magnificent creation come forth. It comes from all of the parts, not just a piece. So with that, we will go into the Catalyst event. And I love reading this with you guys because I don't read it before, so I get to read it with you, and it's so much fun. Okay, so what propels us to begin the search for deeper truth? What sets our feet on the path to awakening? For some, it is tragedy, a change of life so profound that it sweeps away all the old. Comfortable answers that we have relied on to understand the world no longer serve. Whether it be the death of a child, the end of a marriage, the disillusion of a career, the wiping away of our dreams through some financial crisis, the unusual answers will not suffice. Pain becomes the catalyst that mobilizes us to take action. And we search for something greater than the predictable version of reality that we have been inculcated since childhood. For some, it is like a siren song in the quiet moments when we are alone. It hovers like an unspoken yearning behind the day-to-day busyness of our lives. A longing ancient beyond years, This is the cry of the soul, calling for itself. It whispers of a time when we knew more, we understood more, and we were connected more to our eternal self. This is the remembrance of an age when growing up meant growing into mastery, and wisdom was the real goal of life. But the modern mind is now trained by the distractions of our swift and superficial societies to ignore such whispers, brush it aside, until finally the mechanisms of pain and suffering force us to listen. So it was for me. Many things had to change in my life before I was ready to step into that path with Shasta. So it was to be nearly 5 long years before I began my studies with her. My engagement to a music producer in Britain had ended in heartbreak. I had returned to the States on my knees in prayer. I entered a dark night of the soul, where I remained for nearly a year and a half while trying to rebuild my photography business, my home, and all the things that I had abandoned when I had left for England. This is the mystical death that precedes the resurrection, where one descends into the depths of one's own sorrow and pain, in a time of crisis, where the seeker must be willing to endure the dying of the old self. That precedes the spiritual rebirth. Out of the ashes comes a new beginning, just like the phoenix. Each day I knelt by my altar to pray. I've never done that. I've never been a big on my knee pray person. Maybe it's very helpful, but I've never done it. I did it once in my whole life, and that was when I had a dream of myself cutting myself out of a serpent. So I don't know when I'll do that again, because the last time I did it was super profound. Oh gosh, the things that happen. So, but I love this. Okay, so on my knees to my altar to pray, I begin to hear angels' voices raised in song, constantly praising the divine. I've heard that. The thrones is what I call them. My inner spiritual gifts of clairvoyance and clairaudience took a leap into another level. Later, I was to learn that the process of dying to the old self is considered an essential path of enlightenment. I will second that notion that that is truth. And it's rough, but it's truth, but it's rough. So, Tao Malachi, a modern-day Christian Gnostic, writes, "Dying is part of living. You cannot have one without the other. Everything is interconnected, and everything is interdependent. It is the nature of things, ever becoming. You must learn to accept and embrace the whole of life, the whole of yourself. If you would discover the spirit and truth, the light and the darkness, that they must be joined, you must realize the sacred unity." Only later did I realize how true this was, and that this wisdom was at the very heart of our mother. The ancients have called this powerful process of dying and being reborn the initiation. And like the reluctant initiate Zutsu, it is always about letting go of what we once held dear to find a more enduring path. In Christian terms, it means being born again, since the death of the ego allows a powerful shift in consciousness, and then it propels us towards a greater spiritual awakening. The structures that had once supported our life come crashing down, and in their place, something much greater is born. Like Zutsu, this ego death ultimately leads us to our higher self. In my meditation, I began to hear the angels singing in constant praise of the divine. I heard messages about the nature of love and spiritual surrender, and I began to actively discourse with these higher spiritual beings of life, of light. People began asking me to do readings for them, and my clairvoyant abilities began to increase again, as I began to see past lives of those around me, as well as the arc of their present missions here on earth. The arc of present missions here on earth. The arc. These are rays, vibrations of light that emanate. They show you what a person is. Like it shows their vibration, these arcs. I found myself tracking the reasons behind their blocks and traumas and relationship and fears backwards through time. For the first 4 years, I did these readings without ever charging money. But in time, there was such a demand for my sessions that it began impacting my ability to respond to my photography advertising clients. And with all the gifts of spirit, when we serve from a place of the heart, your gifts have a life of their own. In time, my desire to help others allowed me to discover the core wound behind my clients' loneliness, separation, abandonment issues. And I realized that at the root of all the suffering was our inability to realize that we are never alone and that we have never been abandoned by God. During these readings, I had also begun to see angels around people, wonderful spirit guides who were completely committed to the enlightenment of these clients. Some of these guides were there to help heal families, relationships, or careers. Others were there as sources of inspiration for someone's artistic or creative talents. Some were connected to persons of spiritual mission, while other guides had been part of their spiritual team for many lifetimes. All this made me start to wonder about my own guardian angels. And at one point, I realized that while I could see other people's spirit guides quite well, I had no idea about my own. I went through that too. How could I find out who they were? Who could help me with this dilemma? I could think of no one better suited to guide me on this path than Shasta. Seeing the unseen. I arrived at Shasta's house, apprehensive but excited. It had been almost 5 long years since our first encounter, and although I had never approached her for a private session, we had continued to stay in touch. We often crossed paths in the symposiums that I had produced in Atlanta, in the area on a variety of scientific, paranormal, and metaphysical topics. It was possible that Shasta would be able to help me make a breakthrough now. I could see other people's guides so clearly. Why couldn't I see my own? Having walked closely with the Viraji masters for over a decade, I had never questioned who my spirit guides were. I had simply assumed that these masters were my only teachers, but that couldn't be right. Each of us has at least 2, and sometimes 3. Spirit angels or guides who have agreed to help you accomplish all of your life's goals. Certainly, I had the right to know my own allies, didn't I? Shasta met me at the door of her little cottage and led me inside. We sat in the kitchen and I laid out my problem. Why can't I see my own guides? I asked in frustration, especially when I can see everybody else's. I want to know who is helping me on the other side. She listened quietly and took me by the hand, leading me into the healing room. Lie down, she instructed, pointing to the bed. She handed me 2 large double-terminated crystals, one for each hand, then placed a silk pouch over my eyes. Now I want you just to simply breathe, she instructed, her voice a soothing balm. I am going to move some energy blocks out of your body and out of your field. And then we will see where this takes us. As she began to work, my muscles started to relax, and my mind slipped into a quiet state. I began to see flickering lights floating all around me in my inner vision. The faces of many different kinds of beings appeared and disappeared, as if greeting me in turn. Angels, animals, masters, and even Egyptian divinities floated in and out of my consciousness. Nature spirits and elements swept in. I could hear their melodies from the higher levels like a choir of angels. Voices playing on the radio, its volume moving up and down like a wave. After a while, I lost track of all time. Then the separate images stopped. Then all I could see was a golden light. I didn't know how much time had passed before Shasta touched me on the hand. She took the 2 crystals from my palms and slowly lifted the eye pouch. I could vaguely see from the shadows in the room that it was now late in the afternoon. Everybody is here, she said in a quiet voice. The angels, the masters, the fairies, the elementals, the gods and goddesses. The question is, who do you wish to work with? They are all interested in you. I sat up, slowly blinking. Really? I saw them, or at least I think I did. There were a lot of lights. Shasta smiled. Yes, I know. What do I know? I asked, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. Go home and call them in. Decide who you want to work with. I only want to work with the highest energy, I said. She helped me up and handed me an orange. Eat this before you drive. You are not fully back into your body yet. This is great advice. Whenever you guys do this kind of work, if you go into regression therapies, anything like this, before you get in your car and drive, you need to ground. You need to eat some food, and you need to ground and get your body systems moving, because you got to get anchored back into your body because you're still a little loopy. So that's great, great advice. You are not back in your body yet, and you will need to be grounded to get home. I nodded. What did she mean, go home and decide who you want to work with? What were my choices? Oh, I guess she had already told me that. Slowly I walked back to my car, deep in thought. It was now dusk. I sat in front of the seat and ate my orange. Then I drove home slowly. 2 weeks later, my 2 spirit guides arrived and completely changed my life. Ariel and Regal, the eagle and the dove. I know who this is. So, we will pick it up in the next one with Ariel and Regal, the mother and the father of creation. One of the symbols of the Father has always been known as the eagle. This is why we see it in all of our governments and all of our religion and all of this stuff. It's because the eagle is the representation of the divine masculine, but the dove is the representation of the divine feminine. And it's funny because I wear a special pendant and it has the dove on it. And it's in descending, which is the representation of the divine feminine. And then on the other side, it has the power of the divine masculine. So with that, dive into these energies, guys, because there are 2. Not only is there a father, there is a mother. And through their wisdom, you become the son. So this is the goal, is to become Christ. And that happens when you can blend both sides of your consciousness, the father and the mother, in harmony, creating the son. And when those are balanced and they're activating as one in cooperation, unity, and love, there's nothing you cannot imagine or become. So I love you all, and we'll see you on the next one. And I just love this book. I hope you're enjoying it too. And I'm so glad you're here with me. And I send you so much gratitude and favor for taking the journey of the hidden secrets of the divine with me. Because I have a feeling this is all happening exactly as it should and in the time that it should be happening. So I love you all, and I'll see you on the next one. May soul and spirit be with you all, and favor flood you to overflow today, tomorrow, and forever. Have a good one. Bye.